Fort Benning's top shot. The Georgia sun beat down on the parade field at Fort Benning, reflecting harshly off the polished brass of the assembled teams. Sergeant Miller, nicknamed Hammer for his relentless approach to everything, surveyed the competition with a predatory gleam in his eyes. The annual top shot competition had officially begun. He puffed out his chest, his seal trident gleaming on his uniform. "Look at 'em, boys," he boomed, his voice easily carrying over the murmur of the crowd. "Bunch of crayon eaters and ramps. We're gonna mop the floor with these clowns." His team chuckled, a chorus of agreement and shared confidence. Miller thrived on this, on the palpable aura of superiority that surrounded them. He clapped Private Johnson on the shoulder, nearly sending him sprawling. "Johnson here can probably hit a dime at 500 meters blindfolded. Can you say the same, Army?" he shouted towards a group of Rangers, who simply rolled their eyes in response. The announcer's voice crackled over the loudspeakers, introducing each team: Delta Force, Marine Recon, various Army sniper units, and finally, the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard. Miller scoffed. "The Tomb Guard? What are they gonna do, salute the targets to death?" He roared with laughter, and his team joined in. Standing a few rows back, Private Daniel Reynolds of the Old Guard adjusted his stance, unfazed by the SEALs' antics. He ignored the blatant disrespect, his focus already shifting inward, centering himself for the challenges ahead. The heat shimmered off the asphalt, the smell of gun oil and sweat thick in the air. Reynolds closed his eyes briefly, picturing the rifle in his hands, the steady squeeze of the trigger, the precise impact on the target. Miller, still basking in the sound of his own laughter, caught sight of Reynolds. He sauntered over, a smirk plastered on his face. "Hey, Tomb Guard," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You guys brought your white gloves? Gonna polish the targets after we are done obliterating them?" Reynolds opened his eyes, his gaze steady and unwavering. "We're here to compete, Sergeant," he replied, his voice calm and respectful. "Good luck to you." Miller's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, surprised by the quiet confidence in the young soldier's voice. But he quickly recovered. "Luck? We don't need luck. We're SEALs. We make our own luck." He turned back to his team, shaking his head. "These guys are delusional." But a tiny seed of doubt had been planted, a flicker of unease that Miller quickly dismissed. The competition hadn't even started yet. He'd show them all what a real warrior looked like. SEAL swagger. "Look at 'em," Hammer, Miller drawled, spitting a stream of tobacco juice towards a wilting patch of grass. His gaze was fixed on the Tomb Guards, ramrod straight and stoic despite the rising Virginia heat. "All that pomp and circumstance for what exactly? Standing around looking pretty?" A few chuckles rippled through the small group of SEALs, their focus otherwise glued to the firing range. Miller's arrogance was a known quantity, as familiar as the weight of their rifles. "Hammer," Lieutenant Davies cautioned, though a smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Show some respect." "Respect's earned, not given, Lieutenant," Miller retorted, his eyes glinting. He clapped his hands together, the sound echoing across the range. "All right, ladies, let's show these boys what real discipline looks like." They moved with practiced efficiency, a blur of control motion. Rifles were checked, stances perfected, breaths regulated. The air crackled with a barely suppressed energy, a silent promise of deadly accuracy. Miller, naturally, took center stage, his every movement precise and powerful. He raised his rifle, a customized MK-13, and squeezed off a round. The bullet sang through the air, impacting the target with a satisfying thwack, dead center. Beginner's luck, someone muttered, the voice lost in the general bustle. Miller didn't react, but a muscle ticked in his jaw. Competition wasn't just encouraged, it was expected. Yet, an undercurrent of something else ran deeper than simple rivalry. A need to prove himself, not just to his team, but to everyone. He fired again, and again, each shot finding its mark with unwavering precision. His movements were fluid, almost artistic, a stark contrast to the stiff formality of the Tomb Guards. As the SEALs completed their warm-up, the tension in the air was palpable. Miller's swagger was infectious, yet it grated on some, a reminder of the high stakes and the even higher expectations. This wasn't just a competition, it was a test. A test of skill, of will, and of something far more profound. Setting the bar. The first stage was a brutal gauntlet, a timed urban assault course culminating in a rooftop sniper nest. Targets popped up at varying distances, demanding snap decisions and unwavering precision. Team after team stumbled, their times ballooning with each missed shot, each clumsy breach. Then came SEAL Team 6. They moved like a predator, a fluid, coordinated strike. Hammer Miller, leading the charge, barked commands that were barely audible over the simulated gunfire, yet his team responded instantly. Breaching charges detonated with sharp cracks, doors splintered, and the SEALs flowed through the building, clearing rooms with practiced efficiency. Reaching the rooftop, Miller dropped to prone, his sniper rifle already shouldered. The wind whipped around him, but his stance remained rock solid. Crack. The first target, a distant silhouette, disappeared. Crack. 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 3 more followed in rapid succession. He adjusted for the wind, a barely perceptible movement, and squeezed the trigger again. Bullseye. The buzzer blared, signaling the end of their run. A collective gasp rippled through the assembled crowd. The scoreboard flashed, Team 6, 2 minutes, 47 seconds. A new record by a significant margin. Miller rose, a smug grin spreading across his face. He clapped his teammate on the shoulder, the gesture radiating pure, unadulterated pride. Not bad, boys. Not bad at all. He scanned the faces in the crowd, his gaze lingering on the other sniper teams. He didn't need to say anything. His eyes did all the talking. A murmur swept through the onlookers. Did you see that last shot? Clean kill, even with the wind. Another voice, hushed with awe, replied, they're not even breathing hard. It's like they were built for this. The bar had been set impossibly high. The quiet guard. Reynolds stepped forward, his boots crunching softly on the gravel of the firing range. The air hung thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and the metallic tang of spent casings. Sunlight glinted off his polished rifle as he adjusted the sling, his movements deliberate and unhurried. He was a study in contrasts, the quiet eye of the storm brewing within the raw energy of the training ground. Miller swaggered up, his shadow falling across Reynolds's position. Well, if it isn't the silent one. Gonna finally show us you can hit the broadside of a barn, Reynolds, or just make the target feel sorry for you. Reynolds didn't react, his gaze fixed on the distant targets. He checked the windage on his scope, his fingers nimble and precise. Just doing my duty, Sergeant. Miller chuckled, a harsh, grating sound. Duty. Last time I checked, duty involved actually hitting something. You gonna salute the target to death? He clapped Reynolds heavily on the shoulder, the force enough to make a lesser man stumble. Don't embarrass the squad, Reynolds. Some of us actually care about winning. Reynolds simply adjusted his stance, his expression unreadable. He lowered himself into the prone position, the rifle settling comfortably against his cheek. The whirl narrowed to the crosshairs, the rhythmic thump of his own heart the only sound he registered. Miller, sensing his taunts were having no effect, sneered. "Probably never even held a real weapon before you joined up. Bet your mama still makes your bait." He punctuated the sentence with a spit of tobacco juice that landed perilously close to Reynolds's elbow. A muscle twitched in Reynolds's jaw, the only sign that Miller's words had registered. He took a slow, deliberate breath, held it, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against his shoulder, the sharp crack echoing across the range. A perfect headshot. Miller blinked, momentarily speechless. Reynolds realigned, his focus unwavering. Another shot, another bullseye. The reports rang out in rapid succession, each one a precise, deadly whisper that silenced Miller's jeers. Impossible shots. The first shot was almost silent, the report muffled by the distance. A perfect bullseye. 50 yards. Reynolds, face impassive, adjusted his stance slightly. Another shot, another hole directly atop the first, tearing the paper almost clean through. Murmurs rippled through the small crowd of onlookers, mostly junior officers and support staff, drawn by Hammer's earlier boasts. 75 yards. Reynolds didn't hesitate. Breathe. Squeeze. The steel rang, a clean, definitive sound. Another bullseye. Hammer shifted, his jaw tightening. "Beginner's luck," he muttered, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. He spat a stream of tobacco juice onto the dusty ground. 100 yards. Reynolds adjusted the scope, his movements economical and precise. He looked like he was folding laundry, not preparing for an impossible shot. The air shimmered with heat, distorting the target. Another shot. Another bullseye. The collective gasp from the gallery was audible this time. "Damn it," Hammer growled, pushing his way to the front of the crowd. "All right, hotshot, let's see you do that at 200. He grabbed a pair of binoculars, his knuckles white. 200 yards. The target was now a mere speck, dancing in the heat haze. Reynolds took his time, settling into a position that looked almost meditative. The shot echoed across the range, a solitary crack that seemed to hang in the air. Hammer lowered the binoculars slowly. His face was pale, a vein throbbing in his temple. The paper target, viewed through the powerful lenses, showed a ragged hole, dead center. "That's not possible," he breathed, the words barely audible. The murmurs had ceased, replaced by a stunned silence. Even the ever-present desert wind seemed to hold its breath. Hammer's fury. Miller leaned back, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. "Beginner's luck, Reynolds. Enjoy it while it lasts." He watched as Reynolds, almost apologetically, outpaced the SEAL team on the obstacle course, a silent ghost navigating the ropes and walls with an unnerving grace. The smirk began to fray at the edges when Reynolds aced the urban combat simulation, his movements fluid and precise, clearing rooms with an economy of motion that spoke of innate talent, not just training. Miller's team, usually dominant in this exercise, looked sluggish and uncertain in comparison. Then came the long-range target practice. This was Miller's domain, the area where he reigned supreme. He adjusted his scope, a predatory glint in his eyes. A series of near-perfect shots echoed across the range, each one a declaration of dominance. Until Reynolds stepped up. The first shot. Bullseye. The second. Bullseye. The third. Another. Miller's jaw tightened. Reynolds wasn't just hitting the targets, he was consistently grouping his shots tighter than anyone else. "All right, kid," Miller growled, his voice laced with a barely suppressed fury. "Let's see if you can handle the Devil's Breath." The Devil's Breath was a legendary shot, a nearly impossible angle across a windswept ravine, targeting a silhouette barely visible through the shimmering heat haze. Even seasoned snipers rarely attempted it. Miller had only hit it twice in his career. A hush fell over the range. Reynolds calmly adjusted his stance, his face betraying no emotion. He took a slow, deliberate breath, held it, and squeezed the trigger. The report of the rifle shattered the silence. Everyone waited, eyes glued to the target. A beat. 2 beats. Then, a faint metallic clang echoed back across the ravine. Miller's face contorted in disbelief. "No," he spat, the word a venomous hiss. "That's impossible." The unthinkable shot. The final shot was ludicrous. A teacup saucer, 300 meters distant, angled slightly uphill, and obscured by a shimmering heat haze rising from the desert floor. Even with the advanced scopes, the target seemed to dance mockingly. Miller spat, the gesture more performative than practical. "Showboating now, huh? Figures. No way anyone's hitting that. Not even me." His voice dripped with manufactured nonchalance, but his jaw was tight. He handed his rifle to a spotter, pacing like a caged tiger. The other SEALs muttered calculations, fiddling with their kestrels, chewing gum, and squinting into the unforgiving sun. The air crackled with nervous energy, thick with the scent of gun oil and sweat. Reynolds remained motionless, kneeling beside his rifle case. He ignored Miller's bluster and the frantic adjustments of the SEALs. He took slow, deliberate breaths, feeling the grit of the sand beneath his knees. He raised his head, closing his eyes, feeling the subtle push of the wind against his face. It wasn't a raging gale, just a whisper, but enough to nudge a bullet off course at that distance. He opened his eyes, calm and focused, and began adjusting the windage on his scope, the clicks precise and measured. Miller stopped pacing, watching Reynolds with a mixture of disdain and grudging curiosity. "All right, pretty boy," he sneered. "Let's see you work your magic. Going to pray to the wind gods or something?" Reynolds didn't reply. He settled behind his rifle, cheek well firm, eyes locked on the elusive saucer. The world narrowed to that single, challenging target. He inhaled, held, and exhaled slowly, his finger caressing the trigger. The desert held its breath. Silence and respect. The wind whipped harder, biting at exposed skin as Reynolds settled into position. The target, a mere speck at this distance, wavered in his scope. He ignored the jeers from the assembled SEALs, the weight of their disbelief a dull hum in the background. Only the rhythmic thump of his own heart mattered. Miller stood nearby, arms crossed, a smirk plastered on his face. "Showtime, tune guard," he drawled, the words laced with condescension. Reynolds inhaled, a slow, deliberate breath, and let it out even slower. The wind momentarily calmed. He squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against his shoulder, the sound swallowed by the vastness of the range. All eyes followed the bullet's invisible path. A collective intake of breath rippled through the onlookers. Then, silence. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Through his scope, Reynolds saw it, a perfect, clean hole drilled precisely in the center of the target. Not a hair's breadth off. He lowered his rifle, the metallic click loud in the sudden quiet. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. The SEALs, known for their boisterous camaraderie, stood motionless, their expressions unreadable. Miller's smirk had vanished, replaced by a stunned disbelief that aged him a decade. His face was a mass of granite, the arrogance that usually radiated from him extinguished. His jaw worked silently, as if trying to form words that refused to come. Reynolds met Miller's gaze. There was no triumph in his eyes, only a quiet acknowledgement. He offered a small, respectful nod. Miller didn't return it. He simply stared, the color slowly draining from his face. He looked away, his gaze fixed on the distant target, the impossible shot that had just been made. The wind picked up again, whistling a lonely tune across the range. The silence remained unbroken. A new standard. Miller squinted at the scorecard under the harsh fluorescent lights of the armory. The numbers swam before his eyes, each confirming the impossible. Reynolds. Tomb guard. Higher score. He ran a thick hand over his shaved head, the rasp of his calluses a small distraction from the burning shame. He'd seen the kid shoot, of course. Disciplined. Precise. But he'd dismissed it as ceremonial. A performance for the tourists. Not the raw, visceral skill honed by years of combat scenarios. He crumpled the scorecard in his fist, then smoothed it out again. He had to be sure. Recounted each shot, each ring. Damn it. The kid had done it. He found Reynolds polishing his rifle in the quiet corner of the armory, the rhythmic motion a stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside Miller. He cleared his throat. Reynolds. The young guard snapped to attention, rifle still cradled in his arms. Sergeant Miller. Miller shifted his weight, the polished concrete cold beneath his boots. This wasn't easy. Humility didn't come naturally to him. I owe you an apology. Your score, it was damn good shooting. He paused, the words sticking in his throat. Better than mine. Reynolds remained impassive, his gaze steady. Thank you, Sergeant. Miller swallowed. I was dismissive. Arrogant, even. That was out of line. You represent the tomb. You deserve respect. You earned it. He extended his hand. Reynolds met his gaze, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He set the rifle down carefully and clasped Miller's hand, his grip firm, his skin cool. Discipline, Sergeant. Dedication. It's the same standard, no matter the uniform. Miller nodded, feeling a grudging respect bloom in his chest. Maybe this tomb guard thing wasn't just pomp and circumstance. Maybe, just maybe, they were cut from the same cloth after all. A new standard had been set.